So you've been wanting to purchase a firearm from your local gun store, but you've also been putting it off because you've never been to that gun store, or to any other gun store for that matter, and you have no idea how to approach the counter, what questions to ask, what kind of behavior is not allowed, and whether or not they let you hold the gun you're wanting to purchase so you can take a closer look. Or maybe you just visited your local gun store and one of the store associates went all emotional on you and yelled at you for doing something you're totally clueless about. And you just want to know if you could have done any of the things you did differently so you didn't have to be yelled at by anyone. If you're one of the two people I just described, or if you're just someone who's curious to know what are the do's and don'ts in a gun store in general, we've got you covered. In this video, we'll talk about the top 12 things you shouldn't do in a gun store. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you find these kind of videos entertaining or helpful. Before we dive right into the topic, we'd like to talk real quick about what we think is the most important thing to know as far as firearms are concerned, but something which a lot of people either do not know or often overlook. Basic gun safety. If you've ever attended a firearm safety training or any kind of seminar that teaches how to handle firearms, and you know the basic rules of gun safety by heart, then you'll not have any problems visiting any gun store about 50% of the time. There are many rules when it comes to handling and shooting firearms, but as I mentioned, you only need to know the basics. What are the basics, you may ask? Well, there are really only 3, and they're all so easy to remember that if you happen to forget any of them while handling any firearm, you'll draw out negative emotions and reactions from people in the community, regardless of whether you're in a gun store or a shooting range or wherever you may be. The 3 basic rules of gun safety are as follows. 1. You should always treat any firearm as if it's loaded. 2. You should always keep any firearm pointed in a safe direction. The safest direction is almost always down to the ground. And 3. You should always keep your trigger finger straight and off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Again, if you keep these things in mind when handling any firearm in a gun store, you won't have any problems half the time. And with that out of the way, let's talk about the top 12 things you should not do in a gun store. Number 1, don't go to a gun store if you're drunk, high, or have anger management issues. The part about being drunk or high is pretty self-explanatory, so I wouldn't expound on it. But that bit about having anger management issues may not be as simple. You only need to have a heated debate with another person like yourself before you, the other guy, or both of you end up behind bars, hospitalized, or dead. If you're drunk or high or just royally pissed off about something, take some time to calm down, take some deep breaths, and get yourself into a relaxed state before you even think of heading to a gun store. It goes without saying, unnecessary conflicts can be avoided when cooler heads prevail. Number 2, don't just unholster or pull out your firearm from your underwear or even from a box or a case. There are a lot of people who go to a gun store to either show off their gun, trade it in with another customer's gun, sell it to the gun store, or get it fixed because it's broken. Regardless of your reason, you shouldn't just whip your gun out without telling anyone, because people who may not be aware of your intentions may panic thinking you're either robbing the gun store or you're going to shoot someone. And since these people are likely packing heat as well, you may find yourself in a situation where you have to stare down several gun barrels. If you need to take your gun to the gun store for any of the aforementioned reasons, first make sure that it's unloaded, put it in a box, then hand it over to an employee or put it down on the counter. Tell them what's inside the box and why you're handing it to them. Then let them open the box and take the gun out for you. Number 3, don't announce to an employee or to anyone in the gun store that you're armed. Just like unholstering or pulling your firearm from your person without telling anyone, announcing that you're armed is just inviting trouble, as people might think you're trying to rob the gun store. If you're carrying a concealed firearm, there's no point in concealing it if you're just going to let people know about it. You may as well just open carry. And not every state allows that. And even if you do live in a state where open carry is allowed, if the local gun store has a sign posted somewhere saying carrying a loaded firearm inside their premises is prohibited, you'll either have to follow their rules or just go to a different gun store. Number 4, don't just wander around with a gun in your hand. Whether it's your personal CCW piece or a gun store associate handed a gun to you, you should not be walking around the gun store with a gun in your hand because, again, if you do that, you're just asking for it. If it's your CCW piece, you have no business showing it to everyone. And if it's a gun handed to you by one of the gun store associates, you should hand it back to them as soon as you're done checking it out. Number 5. When a gun store associate hands you a firearm, hand it back to them the same way they handed it to you. Everyone who works in a gun store was trained to make sure that a gun is empty before they hand it to any customer. Some of them prefer to hand the gun to a customer with the action open and the gun pointed to the ground. Others simply hand it to the customer with the gun pointed downward and the action closed. Whichever way a firearm was handed to you, when you're ready to return it, just make sure you hand it back to the gun store associate the same way it was handed to you. Number 6. Don't just drop the slide on a semi-auto handgun without permission. Modern handguns, even the cheaply made models, are typically durable and can take tens and even hundreds of rounds worth of beating. They won't break no matter how many times you drop the slide. But you never know when you're handed a lemon. If you happen to have been handed a lemon and it breaks after you drop the slide, someone will have to pay for that gun. If you're not paying for it, the gun store associate who handed it to you most likely will have to pay for it. If the handgun was handed to you with the action open and you want to see what the gun looks like with the action closed, hold the slide and let it gently move forward as you push the slide stop. Number 7. Don't dry fire any firearm without permission. There's really nothing wrong with dry firing. These days, with the advancements in metallurgy and modern processing methodologies companies use, you can dry fire just about any firearm manufactured within the last couple of decades without worrying that the firing pin or any other part might break. But there are exceptions, of course. It's common knowledge that all guns chambered in any rimfire cartridge shouldn't be dry fired. But if you didn't know, there are some guns chambered for centerfire cartridges that cannot tolerate the forces at play when you pull the trigger on an empty chamber. Some budget brand revolvers come to mind. If you're not sure whether or not it's okay to dry fire a particular model you're interested in, it doesn't hurt to ask. Just talk to the gun store associate and tell them you want to test the trigger pull. If it's safe to dry fire, they'll probably tell you to just point it in a safe direction and dry fire away. Number 8. Don't open boxes of ammo that are glued or taped shut. There are more than a few reasons why a gun store would want to seal their ammo boxes. I can come up with 2 off the top of my head. First, bullets are easily stolen because they're tiny little things, and anyone could easily grab a couple of them and put them in their pocket without breaking a sweat. Second, anyone can just snatch a bullet, stick it in the chamber of the gun they're pretending to want to purchase, and the gun store all of a sudden has an armed criminal capable of killing anyone at a moment's notice. Regardless of why the gun store decided to seal their ammo boxes with whatever adhesive material they prefer to use, as a customer, you really only have the right to open a box of ammo after you pay for it. Number 9. Don't handle ammo while you're holding any type of firearm at the same time. This harkens back to the previously mentioned problem of opening boxes of ammo that are glued or taped shut. There are gun stores out there that don't seal their ammo boxes. If you happen to be holding ammo and you're also handling a gun at the same time, people may think you're loading the gun, and it may cause panic. Don't say I didn't warn you if you find yourself staring down the barrel of a gun of someone who's having panic attacks. To be on the safe side, just don't handle ammo while holding a gun at the same time. Number 10. Don't ever talk about politics. Since Trump became president years ago, politics have become so divisive, not just in America, but in all developed countries. Ever heard of Trudeau's dictatorship in Canada? You haven't? Have you been living under a rock the last couple weeks? See how politically intrusive these questions are starting to sound? Seriously, you never know when a broke snowflake SJW soy boy pretending to be a conservative and conceal carrying a Saturday night special might be eavesdropping on you and your best bud while you're at a gun store. If you're not careful, such a troubled individual can put you out of commission quickly and permanently. Again, just to be on the safe side, don't talk politics in a gun store, or in any public place for that matter. Number 11. Don't lie on Federal Form 4473 if you're purchasing any firearm that requires an FFL. If you're a law-abiding citizen, you won't have any reason to lie about anything when filling out this form. But if you have a criminal background and you already know you cannot legally purchase a firearm, don't even bother completing a federal Form 4473 with lies, because doing so is a felony. The FBI conducts background checks on people who fill out these forms using the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS. They'll find out if you're lying, and you'll be served. Number 12. Don't ask any gun store associate about gun laws. If it isn't already obvious, they're just simple folks like yourself. They'd not be working in a gun store if they were lawyers. They're told from day one never to answer legal questions or give any kind of legal advice. If you have general questions that pertain to gun ownership, laws, and regulations, you can simply go to the NRA's Institute of Legislative Action website at nraila.org, locate the link to their Contact Us page, fill out their online form with your info, and write your questions to them. You can also call the NRA's Office of Legislative Counsel at 703-267-1161 if you'd rather talk to someone. And that's it for my list of the top 12 things you shouldn't do in a gun store. This is definitely not an exhaustive list. If you feel as if there were more important things I could have included on my list, you can let me know by posting a comment down below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and click on that bell icon so you don't miss out on any new content.